Welcome to Ear Biscuits. I'm Rhett.
And I'm Link. This week at the round table of dim lighting, we're asking the question, how did we survive before cell phones?
Or mobile phones.
Or smartphones, mobile phones.
That's all I can think of.
I think that's what we call phones.
Yeah, this is a little something that we're gonna try today, a little something different, where we're actually going to we're calling this a nostalgia tour. How do you say that word?
Nostalgia.
You don't say nostalgia?
Nostalgia? No.
Yeah, because it's like when you get nauseous thinking about things from the past, you get nostalgious.
I didn't know that I felt that sometimes, but I do. I mean, we may feel that over the course of reminiscing over our relationships with phones before cell phones.
That's an interesting term, relationships.
Because I just might feel sick to my stomach that this is how we used to live, or that I wish I still lived that way. I haven't quite figured that out, but what I do know is, I mean, frequently on Ear Biscuits we'll reminisce about things. So I just thought let's reminisce within this category of what phones used to be like.
Right, and so we thought of some things like, remember when?
Well, don't say them yet.
I'm gonna make blanks. I'm just making blanks.
Cause I have my list, you have your list.
Remember when blankety blank 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 phones? So that's how it's gonna be, and they'll be like, remember when blankety blank 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 phones?
Right.
But before we reminisce, let's talk about the present day. I mean, let's talk about the reality of being tethered.
Yeah, I mean,
ironically, you're tethered wirelessly tethered. Think about that. Put that on a t-shirt. I'm tethered to a wireless phone.
That's not really a sellable t-shirt, I don't think. Yeah, last night Christy and I went out on a date and we're driving to the restaurant. I mean, when we're at the table having a date, like we're not that couple who's just on our phones and not talking to each other. But there are some times when something will come up in conversation and the phone will become a third party to our date, like a third wheel, where it's like, oh, there's unlimited information on this thing. But
the challenge is when, if you have to go to the phone in the midst of a conversation, which happens often, and there are legitimate reasons to defer to the internet in the midst of a conversation, often during an argument, to get to a fact. I argue with my wife all the time about facts. No, I don't. You know, just anytime you need to reference something. The temptation, once you have access to all the information in the world, you get your information and you're like, well, what's on Twitter?
Well, yeah,
somebody like my photo?
We were driving.
Can't do that.
We were driving and like we were already having a serious, we weren't having an argument. We were having like a
discussion.
Let's share things that are on our hearts and minds with each other. Let's get into that mode even before we're at the restaurant.
Did it happen naturally, or did you prompt it like a youth pastor?
I'd like to share something from my heart and mind.
Or was it just natural?
It was just natural.
Okay,
like,
good.
You know, our relationship is as vibrant as ever. And it's not facetious, even though it sounded that way. No, we were just talking.
You were just talking like two normal people on a date.
And I look over and she's on her phone. Now, unlike me, she can do more than one thing at once. Mm-hmm. So I do respect that.
She's also she's not driving, so.
And she's not driving. I was driving and talking, that's two things.
Yeah, well, you don't do that well.
But I was kind of making an introspective point, and I thought it was a very great opportunity for connection, and she was listening, but when I looked over there and she was on her phone, I was like, do you have to be on your phone right now? I'm trying to make a point about something. This feels important to me. And she's like, well.
Look at this dog hug this cat.
No, she was actually talking to the babysitter, whoever coordinating the time that we would come back home. So it was a legitimate exercise. But I was like, because she was like, I have to, you know, she has to leave and now I know when we're getting back and I have to tell her and she needs to know right now. But so I was barking up the wrong tree, but I did feel like, you know, before the cell phone, if you would coordinate all that, you know, you'd have to go through all these great links to do it, but you weren't constantly in conversation.
And once you were gone, you were gone. You were gone.
Yeah, unless it was an emergency. Even if it was.
What'd you do, tell people what restaurant you're going to? I guess some parents did. We were never parents without cell phones. So we don't know what it was like to be a parent. Like if my parents were, first of all, I don't remember my parents having a date night. That's like a modern invention. But would they have told the babysitter, they probably said, this is what we're going to do and this is when we're gonna be back. But they didn't say,
I'm paying you to be completely in charge.
Yeah, right. Handle everything.
I'm not paying you to then text me with every little thing.
Sidebar, did you, your daughter is 15 years old.
Yeah.
Why didn't she just do the babysitting? She doesn't want to take care of the kids?
Well, that's a good question. That just doesn't work a lot of times. I'll just put it that way.
Because I'm thinking about instituting my date night.
Right.
And just not having any child care.
Oh, we do that. I mean, the kids are old enough to take care of themselves, or Lily and Lincoln to help watch over Lando, but none of them can drive, and there's like logistics that are happening, like they had to go to different places and stuff like that.
Right.
And like, so it's
sometimes you got to cover it with an adult.
We have an ongoing arrangement, so then she helps out with things like date night too, but it's a much larger scope than that. But I look over at Christy and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna jump down your throat about this. But then I swear, when I looked over there again, she was on Instagram. I think so.
Oh, my wife is constantly on it. What my wife found this year was Twitter. And that is just, she's a Twitterholic, man.
But when there's, and it's not like when we have a spare moment, you just find yourself reaching for your phone, whoosh, pulling that thing out. It's almost a mindless reflex to pull that thing out.
Oh yeah.
And just in fact, be on it.
I saw somebody tweet the other day, do you remember what it was like to just poop?
Yeah, without being on your phone.
What was it like to just poop? Now I've made repeated pledges to myself to not surf while pooping, but I just can't stick to it, man.
Have you tried pudding? Have you tried pudding?
It goes right through you.
Have you tried putting a book on the back of the toilet? And then you're tempted to read it. Mm-hmm. Have you tried that?
I used to read books.
But now that can you?
I used to read books.
Can you not pull
on the toilet? Let me clarify.
Now you pull the.
Yeah.
Have you tried putting the phone away and pulling out a book?
Not since the phone was a thing. I've taken a book to the crapper.
Yeah, but then you're on it too long. Yeah, the phone is the perfect thing. You just get a little taste.
You shouldn't do any of that though, because sometimes you get into, like an Instagram hole,
and you're sitting there.
Next thing you know, you got hemorrhoids.
Yeah.
You just can't do that, man. You shouldn't even take it in there. It shouldn't work. It should be like those grocery stores that have like some kind of scrambler on the phones. I'm convinced. What's happening in grocery stores?
Well,
there's a scrambler on the phones.
They put one in the DMV. I can pretty much believe that.
I'm pulling up recipes because I'm at the freaking grocery store and I've got no service. I got like 1X.
That is a good,
what's happening there?
I don't think they have any reason to block like cell signal in there. I think it's the exposed steel of the ceiling.
You think it's being blocked by just the structure?
By this, but that wouldn't make sense.
Well, how come you get cell phone signals while in buildings and office
all
buildings?
Types of structure.
Like on the first floor of a large office building, your cell phone works. Why doesn't it work in a grocery store?
Must be the
grocery.
Is
it just the grocery store?
I think it's the food.
You think food is absorbing the cell signals? Yeah, maybe chips, because there's a lot of chips. The chips aisle is gotten nothing but chips.
Have you correlated the signal to going away in certain aisles?
I've definitely never gotten it in the chips aisle.
I don't know. I could pull out my phone right now and Google it, but I'm not going to.
I think we should just put our phones in a bag of chips and see if it works.
I mean, this podcast is an exercise in, I was gonna say stamina, but restraint is the word I'm looking for. Sometimes it's an exercise in stamina.
Stamina.
And I think some listeners are like nodding their head right now. Yeah, I can barely get through this. But it's restraint because we're not going to our phones. We're just having a conversation for like an hour. With each other every week. That's healthy.
I put my phone on airplane mode when I do this, or airport mode, as you would say.
Yeah, I do say that.
When I'm doing a podcast. That's what I do. Well, let's reminisce.
Yeah, because I've got a list of things. It's not in direct contrast to the mobile phones. It's things that are like until I started thinking about it, things I just almost forgot existed, like the way my life and the world used to operate was so different.
Yes, and you'll find out all about that in a second. But first, we want to let you know where you can get this snazzy hoodie that Link is wearing.
Get that.
Which sometimes, for some reason, I call hoodies beanies. They got a weird thing in my brain that wants me to call it hoodie beanies.
Never been a beanie.
Maybe because I love beanies so much.
Get that. It's nothing like just wearing a shirt and then realizing, I could cover my head with part of this shirt.
And this hoodie has the latest in hoodie technology. It's called the drawstring. Look at that. It's a string that goes through the hood, can be tied, it can be left hanging. You can hang at different lengths, at which point it will distress some people depending on their personality.
Now my son told me that if you tie your hoodie strings, that means you're in a relationship. And if you don't,
there's always something.
It means that you're not.
Well,
you're single, you're dangling, but then you're tied up.
Well, okay. You know what?
It makes sense.
You know what else they're doing? At least
dangling or tied up.
They're doing it in North Carolina because I learned this from my nephews. If you're in a relationship, you wear the girl's scrunchie as a wristband.
Is that right?
You wear a wristband, and apparently it's color coded. Like a certain color is, but definitely the scrunchie on it. She gives you the scrunchie. It's like exclusive.
Ooh, I've been scrunchied. All right, go to mythical.store and get
scrunchies.
Hey,
we need to start selling scrunchies.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the youth are into.
Always looking for something else.
Relationship scrunchies. Okay.
So
did you say the website? Mythical.store.
Mythical.store, I said. Yeah. So we got our list here. Let's see. I mean, I've got mine in no particular order. You want to go first? I don't know. Hit me with one. Let's reminisce.
I'm gonna start with payphones.
Oh, payphones.
Remember payphones?
Not even phones at home.
The phones you had to pay for.
I'm gonna grab my dog. Hold on. Come here.
Yeah, well, she's usually so docile and just likes to sit in your lap, but she seems
she was afraid.
Concerned about something.
She was afraid
today.
to come up here, or something.
She's intimidated by the new innovation in hoodies.
There we go.
Let me just give you a couple of facts. Well, you know what? Let's just see how bad you are with numbers, because that's always entertaining. How many?
I'm at a payphone.
In 1999.
How did that song even work?
In 1999, how many payphones were there in the United States of America?
Well, there's 50 states. I would say there's probably 10. In what year?
1999.
Oh, 99.
20 years ago.
Yeah, but cell phones existed then.
Cell phones were not in wide use at that point. No,
quarter of 500,000 payphones in operation or in existence.
There's not a distinction, just in operation.
Well,
yes.
a lot
I'm
of
not talking about like apocalyptic ones and like next to the Salton Sea or something. I'm rounding up.
250,000.
2 million.
2 million?
2 million in 1999. And then how many in March of 2018?
Well, they're all still there. They're just not working.
How many are in service? Many of them are not in service anymore, but how many of them are in service in
50,000.
Oh, you're not bad. 100,000. So there's 100,000 payphones. Now this is super interesting. A fifth of them are in the state of New York. A fifth of all payphones that are active are in the state of New York. And
I wonder why.
They're now, wouldn't it, okay, doesn't it seem like it would be something logical if I told you like, there's 100,000 payphones left, and I got this all from a CNN Money article, by the way. I just didn't, I'm not just making this up. If I told you there's only 100,000 payphones left in the United States, and they're all owned by one billionaire, or all owned by one company. That seems like, yeah, there's one person who got into this old technology.
Yeah.
No, those 100,000 payphones are controlled by 1,100 independent providers. That was fascinating to me.
when is the last time you used a payphone? And I don't even remember really using payphones much like back in the day.
Well, I'm about to blow your mind because it's still a business. At least in 2015, it was. I don't know how many were in operation, not many more than there are now. In 2015, those payphones in operations generated $286 million in revenue.
You talking coinage going into the machines?
Well, I guess possibly you'd maybe collect calls would also go into that number.
Okay.
I guess, I'm assuming because it's the same as a provider. Now, This is just fascinating to me. So they're very useful still in certain situations, like when you're out of range. Like apparently the payphones in Yosemite Valley are very, very, like there's a guy who owns those. And he makes a bunch of money off
that
those
makes sense.
Because your
no
cell phones
service.
don't work in these national parks. Also, disasters like when phones are the cell networks are overwhelmed, or if there's like a disaster and like there's completely incapacitated, like payphones are very useful. So you would think that okay, we've kind of reached some sort of like stasis. 100,000 payphones, probably what we need in case of emergency. But there's a weird law that the FCC passed that I didn't really read enough about it to know exactly what was going on, but it essentially has to do with the auditing that is required. And apparently the auditing that is required for these payphones by the companies who are servicing them costs more than they're generating. And so now it's becoming an unsustainable business and payphones are going out of business. Not the business to get into unless they're able to talk to FCC, at least as of March of last year, out of this weird regulation.
I don't know what they're auditing.
I think it's to make sure that the right parties are paid for the phone calls, like the collect calls, the calls that cost money that's not coinage. I don't know. I didn't read that much about it. I just know that they're going away, but like having read about them, I began to think I should be using payphones more often.
Why? What, I mean, do you have a strong memory of having a great experience in a payphone booth?
I've never had a great experience in a payphone booth.
Yeah, but I mean, I was always afraid to touch it or like put it up to my ear.
You don't have to touch it. You can just get a nice distance.
They were very weighty. Like I remember a few times you pick up just next time you go by a payphone.
Well, of course they are.
Just pick it up and like pick up that receiver and that thing is heavy.
Do you know why it's gotta be so durable? Think of all the people who
just
slamming it down on the thing after a bad phone call.
Yeah, because a lot of the times you're in like some sort of like frustrated situation on a payphone trying to call home.
I'd like to have a phone that durable at home.
Well, you could probably buy a payphone and like hook it up at your house.
I'm sure there's somebody.
Now you don't have a landline, do you?
I do.
You do?
I do, and I'm gonna
I had a landline.
I'm gonna talk about my landline in the context of another. Do you remember so-and-so?
Well, the one on my list that you reminded me of is beepers. Remember beepers?
Beepers, man.
So before
Beepers, the new Jeepers.
AKA pagers. Before cell phones came about, and even as they were starting to catch hold, people were having beepers in like the early 90s. They're like, I mean, I think there was like a drug culture around beepers. There was also hold on. That's
I wasn't involved. I think there might have been a drug culture around beepers, meaning drug dealers all had beepers. Yes, that's what you meant.
But I mean, it was also just something that I learned about in hip hop. Like, I know there was a Tribe Called Quest song called the Sky Pager.
Oh, Sky Pager.
Yeah. And the Low End Theory, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be cool to have it'd be cool to have a beeper. And then fast forward many years later, I become an engineer and I was issued a beeper.
A beeper, I never had one.
I had a beeper, dude.
Makes you feel powerful.
And
makes you feel like Batman.
I was
or
trying,
at least Robin.
I had to read about how it worked. Cause even though I carried it around for a couple of years,
it beeps, man.
I couldn't remember. I would have to travel between different facilities. Like I'd get in my car and drive around and
did you have it on the outside of the belt?
Different. It would be on where do we want to put it in my underwear?
Well, some people put it in a pocket.
I'm an engineer, man. I'm walking around with my shirt tucked in and I got a belt. That's back when I used to wear belts. And I would hang it on the belt with pride, man.
Well, and you should have. I'm just saying, you don't wear belts now. Never see you in a belt.
So the beeper is like, if I was talking to my kids about this, or if you've never heard of it, it's a device that then it has a phone number associated with it, and when you dial the phone number, then it like makes this noise, and then you can enter in other numbers with your phone, and then those numbers that you enter in will show up on the beeper when it beeps. And typically you would just put your phone number in the beeper, and so then when you send it, I would get, like my beeper would beep and I would look at it and it would have a phone number on it, and that's the number that I would then call once I got to a phone.
Right, but the person calling didn't have to do anything except call the beeper.
They had to put in their message, because sometimes you'd put in a phone number and then you put 911, and that wouldn't mean there was an emergency. It would just mean, call me back as soon as possible, this is urgent. Or,
didn't people call them buzzers as well?
No.
Nobody called them buzzers?
Never. Not
pager.
Pager.
Sky pager.
Sky pager.
Right.
Beeper. And you would, if you put like.
Buzzers.
143. 143 just meant I love you. So other engineers would say they loved me occasionally, I guess.
Yeah. That's sweet.
And it made you feel important when you're like in the middle of a conversation, or you're walking around a facility, and all of a sudden you're beeping and you're like up, and I just
got paged.
I would have to.
I just got buzzed.
I remember I had this cool technique of like, whoosh, I would pull it off of my belt and look at it.
I'm sure it was very cool.
The numbers were so small you had to like really hold it up to your eye. And that was a way to tell everybody around you, I have been issued a beeper. I can see you don't have one.
A functioning beeper.
I have a functioning beeper. So then I would just run, then you run into the nearest phone to answer a 911.
Yeah, doctors, speaking of 911, I mean, doctors all had them, right?
They still do, actually. Beepers are still in effect, to use the terminology, because they operate on, they don't operate on cell service, they operate on a much more reliable service.
Really?
Yes, and that's why.
What are they operating on?
Firemen, doctors,
what are they operating
medical
on?
Personnel.
Different frequencies?
Yeah, it's a different.
The beeper frequency.
I think it's like a radio wave. I think.
Well, I think they're all radio waves
in
some degree, just different frequencies. I don't know.
Maybe so.
I never had one, but now you make me feel like I should get one of those too. I should get one of those and beat myself in a payphone.
Well, I mean, and you're the most reliably reachable, but you're not. And then you could have a two-way pager when you could page something. You could page a number back. I did not have one of those. I was not a second level manager at IBM, as they call it. I was just a first level.
A peon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you never even experienced that. You never had a beeper.
No, I never had a beeper. Never had a reason to have a beeper.
Ha!
Nobody wanted to beep me.
What a loser. I mean, just an unimportant person you must have been.
Yeah, I was. I was siloed.
That was very important. I had to be reached.
Do you remember
for nothing
dialing 411?
Information.
Now 411, people use it as slang. Well, they did, at least in the 90s. I think they still do. What's the 411 on that? Give me the download, give me the info. And of course, this is based on the fact that you could dial 411, and you still can dial 411, but this was a reliable service before the internet.
Yes.
To
get a phone number.
Usually just to get a phone number of a place.
Yeah. So then you could call them and get the more whatever you talk to them.
You could also get an address of a place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you could get information. I think. I never used it. Literally never used it. And I don't know why. Because it's a real person. It's not a machine. It's a real person.
It still exists?
It still exists. And we're going to call it.
Ha! Okay. All right. So are you gonna ask for a number?
Well, let's find out, bro.
What does that mean?
411 search. For service in English, press 1 or stay on the line. Para español.
Yeah, what? Let's do it in English.
City and state, please.
What?
Des Moines, Iowa.
Say the name of the business you want, or say residence.
Reservoirs.
What? What are you doing?
That's County of Polk, right?
No.
Say the name of the business you want, or say residence.
I would like to speak to a human.
You want to speak to a human?
1 moment for an operator.
Yes. We're about to get a 411 operator.
Thank you. What listing in Des Moines?
Yeah, just real quick. I'm actually, I don't need a listing in Des Moines, but I just wanted, if you have a quick second to just talk about 411 as a service.
Yeah, please hold for a supervisor.
What?
Supervisor.
Supervisor, city and state, please.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I said Des Moines, Iowa, but really what I meant was I'm currently talking to a friend about 411 service and the fact that it still exists. And we wanted to call and just like how popular is this service still?
I mean, it's definitely declining, but we're still here.
Oh wow. So
What kind of information can
so
they
how
give us?
long have you been doing it?
Me, 20 years.
20 years. So like how much smaller is the department than it was 20 years ago?
Can
Way
we get
smaller. Like, I mean, I don't have exact numbers, but way smaller.
Wow. Okay. And we were just talking. We used to call to get phone numbers, but you can get phone numbers, addresses. Like what all can you still get?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much phone numbers and addresses if it's published. There's not really much else. Like
Yelp reviews?
No, you can't get Yelp reviews. So
for a while we did like movie times, but it just wasn't worth it. We stopped. So it's really just phone numbers and addresses.
What movies have you seen lately?
Okay, we don't do that. I do have to go though. I can't. We don't just chat either. All we do is look up numbers here.
okay.
I do apologize.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Well, how about Bob Jenkins in Des Moines, Iowa?
Bob Jenkins. If you really want to talk to
tried.
Bob Jenkins, just call back. So basically you can't conduct a relationship with 411. They just can't chat.
You screwed that up for me, man. That's why I was telling you to be quiet. I was having a great conversation with that woman. She completely opened up. She was like, I've been doing it for 20 years. It's a lot smaller. Like, what movies have you seen lately? And then she got pissed, man, and she wanted to go. Like
She said you couldn't chat.
She could have chatted with me. That woman would have talked to me for 17 to 20 minutes. And it would have been amazing. We didn't even get her name.
20 years of just giving people exactly what they need. That's probably satisfying and draining.
She sounds satisfied. So I never called it. Did you call it?
I don't recall ever calling 411, but I'm sure, my mom wanted to see if the Golden Corral was open early or something. You know?
I just used the phone book.
That's so much work. You gotta think about where things fall in the alphabet. Phone book, that's another thing we don't use anymore. I mean, they'll still stack up a phone book in front of my house and I'll put it directly in the recycle bin. It's just, I feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Boy, that was thrilling. I wrote down
That was what?
Thrilling.
Oh, I didn't know what you said.
What about dialing *69?
Oh, now I've done that.
*69. Now if you beep *69,
You make
that
it
means
sound
something
so
else.
dirty.
But if you dial *69, it would give you the last number that called you.
Yeah, and it was what killed prank calling.
Yes.
But if you were prank calling, you could dial, what could you dial to make your number unlisted before you dial it? Star what?
*68 or something? There was *96. You could block your call before you dialed. You could do that in order to block people's ability to see.
I don't know what it was.
On caller ID. But
yeah, you could dial something.
But
we did it all the time. It was the counter to *69.
*69 was. It was like if the phone was ringing and you couldn't get to it.
Yeah, and you were kind of well, yes, you wanted to know who called you.
And you didn't have an answering machine or they didn't leave an answer. It was just, I guess it would just drive people nuts, so they would pay extra.
Who was that called?
Who was that called?
What?
67.
*67 was how you blocked
Block
your number.
being *69.
And I would assume that this still all works on landlines. Like I said, I've got one, I'm gonna test it.
I don't remember using that one that much. I don't, if I didn't answer the phone, again, you would just like, who was that? I don't know, they'll call back later.
We also weren't adults
right
when this was the way things were. I think I probably did it a couple of times thinking that maybe I'd gotten a phone call from a girl or something, you know.
I remember
but
another thing on my list that I did do was all the phones in your house were connected. So it wasn't like every person had their own phone line. I mean,
party line, man. Or at least within the house.
Yeah, within the house. And so if my stepsister at the time was like talking to her boyfriend, I could like pick up my Garfield phone gingerly.
His eyes would open.
And then I would just like listen. I would cover up the talk hole.
You eavesdropped.
Just listen it, just see what I could learn.
What did you learn?
Nothing. I don't know. I know a lot now. So probably some of it came from then. It's like.
You were that little brother, that little half step brother, not even half brother.
Yeah, I wasn't addicted to it. I didn't do it constantly, but man, I would do it sometimes.
Violating her privacy. I mean, I never listened to my brother's phone calls. I was afraid to do that.
But the parents could listen in too. You could just get a little, but you would hear that breathing. It would be like, get off the phone, Link. Well, I would get that. I'm saying she would hear my breathing.
You gotta be better than to let the breath be heard.
Well, a man gotta breathe.
Breathe. You pull away from the microphone to breathe.
Did you, so, or you would just be on, and my mom still has a landline, and like I'll call and like Lewis will answer, I'm talking to him, and then he'll talk to me for a while, and then all of a sudden he'll just be like, so! And then mom will get on the phone in the bedroom. Then they're both on the phone. Well, that's
so easy.
That's actually
two people at a speakerphone.
Yeah, that's something that is lost. That was nice.
It cannot be replicated.
Yeah, it's without the landline.
Two people.
I don't have a landline.
On a close microphone, speaking into your ear. It's like a conference call.
Yeah, it's like I'd have conference calls with like family members all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mom and Lewis in different rooms, just talking away.
Well,
I would talk to my mom for a long time, and then I realized Lewis would all of a sudden, after like talking to her for like 20 minutes, all of a sudden then Lewis would be like, well, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna let the two of y'all talk. I was like, oh, he's been on here this whole time. I forgot, I kind of forgot he was still on here.
Well,
good.
You can take 20 minutes of it. I still do have a landline. We got it, well, when you get like
they try to make you get
the service and stuff, you can get it. And my wife was like, yeah, let's get it because, we've got kids and, if they need to get in touch with us, because at the time when we bought the current house, neither of the kids had a cell phone.
Right. But if they're there and they need to call 911 or something.
Shepard doesn't have a cell phone, and sometimes for short stints, he's on his own, like when we go out on the prairie, to bring back a deer.
Okay.
He'll spend a few fortnights alone. No, for a few minutes alone sometimes, and it's like, Shepard, if anything happens, and so I remember I was like, I had to show them how to use the phone, and apparently it's not as simple as I remember. At least they did not understand. Like, no, you pick it up, it's making a noise. That's called a dial tone.
Yeah.
Then you have to press the buttons, but you like just the fact that they're pressing buttons that are not on a touch screen, and like they couldn't press them all the way in to know that they had like registered the number, and it's just like all these little things are like, no, you didn't hit that, you didn't hit it. You know why you didn't hit it? Because you didn't hear it.
Yeah.
When you hit the number, you'll hear the associated tone with that particular number.
Dial.
Eventually they got it.
You're right though. Dial tones don't exist. Give me another one off your list.
Remembering phone numbers.
Right. Yeah. There was a time in our lives when there was like drawers in my brain that were dedicated to people's phone numbers.
I thought we could have a fun little exercise. Now, obviously, Kiko, we're going to have to edit these. But I want to throw out someone's phone number from the past. Now, let's start with,
Well, I think it's,
I'm gonna start with your phone number when you lived in that part, before you moved to
My first house.
Gregory Circle.
yeah, my first house. Yeah, that's it.
That's crazy. Hold on, because how old were you when
I
you
mean,
moved?
first of all,
How old were you when you moved to Gregory Circle? What grade?
I think I was 12.
Right, so we're talking about, I just recalled your phone number from first, second, third, fourth, fifth
yeah.
grade.
28
The
years
first
ago.
5 years of our friendship.
Yeah,
Just
and then I moved, and do you remember my phone number once I moved? This is more recent. This one should be a little easier. That's it. I mean, you were in one house,
That's crazy.
so I know yours is easy.
Yes.
So that's easy. But do you remember our phone number in college? Maybe it was our dorm room number.
Not a clue. Not a clue. Like that is.
It was the NC State numbers were.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the next part?
No. Oh, okay.
Isn't that it?
Okay, interestingly, I've had I think I've actually used that for things.
Oh, like your password?
No.
Like your bank pin?
No, like when you're like trying to find, like when you're trying to like, I don't have anything that has that now, but like a Google number or
I mean,
something like
I don't
that.
know your phone number now. Like I knew your North Carolina phone number.
I don't know
But,
my phone number now. Like, maybe I do.
When you got a new phone number, I don't know it.
Well, okay.
That's gone.
Right, so.
Like I know my wife's number, I know my number, but I mean we've had them a long time. I don't know my kids' phone numbers. That's actually a bit scary, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that specifically related to this. So obviously there were very good reasons to know these phone numbers, but and I still know your phone number because it's the phone number that you got the same year that I got my original phone number, the North Carolina phone number. I've changed my phone number, but you should know your family members, all your immediate family, and then you should also know emergency contact, like next of kin. You should have those.
This is kind of a
memorized.
wake-up call. Or we should just use 411. Like so my kids need to get in touch with me, 411 it.
Yeah, but you might not be in 411. In fact,
I should not be.
if we've done things the right way, you're not in 411.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
we
but
should test that.
But okay, because I have this fear, going back to speaking of payphones, it's like, okay, run out of gas with a dead phone. Like that's a bit of running out of gas with a phone that's not currently working.
Vultures circling.
And I'm not talking about being out in the wilderness. I'm talking about just like being in like Anaheim. You know what I'm saying? Like at that point, you're like, okay, now I'm gonna be the guy that goes up to people and says, can I use your phone? And now I'm not a gracious person. When strangers come up to me in need, I always just assume that they're scammers.
And it kind of feels like, can I use your toothbrush?
Right.
Pretty intimate.
Because you've got those people who come up to you at the gas station.
Like I use this thing on the crapper, man.
You got those people that come up to you at the gas station and they've got a story, and then they go up to every person. You know that this is a scam. Like 99% of the time this is a scam.
You're gonna hand them your phone, they're just gonna run?
No, they're not asking for the phone. They're asking for like a couple of bucks or something like that. Now, and just as a policy, I give to a lot of things, but I don't give to those people because I think that I can't verify that. This just seems shady, right?
Yeah.
But I don't want to be that guy that has to go and ask a stranger for the phone. Now, I guess I would go to the payphone.
You wouldn't know what number to call.
Right. Well, so double whammy. You get in that situation and you don't know the number. So I guess you could. We do now know that 411 is still available, but I don't think that a lot of people that we would want to call are on 411. So I know my wife's phone number. Got that memorized. It's the same one that she had when I got her first cell phone when she was 20 years old. So I think I'm okay, but I don't know I don't know my parents'
My
phone number.
kids
I
know my
brother's
number.
phone number.
They know my number.
I think my kids know my new number. They definitely know Jesse's number.
But how would you know if they knew it? Because you don't know it. You'd have to pull it up on your phone, I guess.
But beyond those numbers that you need for emergency situations, it does not, other than just for your own personal memory exercise and trying to like stave off degenerative disease or something like that, there's really no reason to keep your numbers in your head, because you can easily just offload it to your phone. And if you are seriously one of those people that you do not have, I guess there are still people out there who have a smartphone but do not have their contacts backed up in a cloud situation, in some service, like you need to do that.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason that your phone should be the only place that you have these phone numbers. That just, make an adjustment.
All right, I got another
You'll
one
thank me later.
on my list of speaking of dialing things for information. We would dial a number and it was the local bank
First Federal Bank.
to get the exact time and temperature.
Hold on, I'm assuming that you wrote this phone number down so we can call it.
I wrote down, well, I looked it up and it doesn't exist. So I have another number that yes, we can call.
I called the First Federal number literally, and I think I can remember this number.
We would call them, because here's what happened, like
What was the number? Do you remember the
a
number?
lightning would strike, a lightning would strike.
Just one lightning.
Power would go out and then you're like, I gotta reset my phones. But how do you do that? Well, you call the bank, First Federal time, 10:58.
Right.
First Federal temperature, 49 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, so you called it for time when you need to reset the time. You called it for temperature when you wanted to know what the temperature was, and you didn't want to sit around and wait for Greg Fishel to come on and tell you, what the temperature was.
Yeah, and
I called it all the time when I was getting ready to go to school. And I was like, how cold is it outside? I would call First Federal so I could get the freaking temperature to know if I needed to put a jacket on.
I watched the weather for that. But
You watch the weather when?
every
In
morning.
the morning? You
Every
watch
morning.
the weather in the morning?
Oh yeah, I loved the weather, man. I loved
Loved
the
the
weather,
weatherman.
man. I thought
So
that
we
was
don't
a
know
great
that.
profession.
So you're telling me that you can't call that number, because I swear within the last 5 years I've called that number when I was at home.
Well, there's lots of places where you could call popcorn 767-2676 and get a pre-recorded voice telling you the time. That does not work anymore, but you can dial 202-762-1401, which I think is the Naval Observatory, and it'll give you the exact Eastern Standard Time. So let's call that one. Let's figure out what time it is. And this will be Eastern Standard Time. There's a Mountain Standard Time number. I assume there's a Pacific.
U.S. Naval Observatory Master Clock at the tone Eastern Standard Time. 21 hours, 10 minutes, 15 seconds.
Wow.
Universal Time, 2 hours, 10 minutes, 20 seconds. U.S. Naval Observatory Master Clock at the tone Eastern Standard Time. 21 hours, 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Universal Time,
Beep.
2 hours, 10 minutes, 35 seconds.
He's repeating himself now.
I like that guy's voice.
Yeah, I want that guy to be my Siri. Is that possible?
No, it's not. So yeah, I mean, we used to dial a number to figure out what time it was.
Now, I probably should have talked about this with remembering phone numbers, but Rolodex.
Rolodex.
The Rolodex.
You're talking about an address book that is on a swivel.
You didn't have one of these at your house?
No, I never had a Rolodex. That's like something that like an ad man and like Mad Men had on their desk. You had a Rolodex?
We had a version of a Rolodex that I needed to know, like, what is my cousin's number or something like that. And my mom would go and all the cards were organized and she would flip through them. It was a Rolodex. It would roll around. It may not have been the brand name Rolodex, which I'm gonna tell you about because it's absolutely fascinating.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so the Rolodex, which just to explain, it was basically like this ringed collection of cards that you could write numbers and names on, and organize them by alphabetical order and put any information you want. This thing was invented by
Rolodex.
Arnold Neustadter. He was a 20th century inventor from Brooklyn. Now, he also invented, before this, the Swivodex, which was a device that kept ink bottles from spilling. I don't know for what purpose.
Well, because you don't want to spill your ink, man.
He also invented the Clipodex.
Oh, wow.
Sensing a theme here, Arnold.
What is that for, paper
It was a
clips?
device that attached to the knees of stenographers to keep their pads from moving.
Oh, wow.
Not, their pads, the ones that were on their knees. And he also made, he changed things up. The Punched, which was a hole puncher, made holes in papers. Now, then he came along.
Prolific inventor.
With the Rolodex. Now, the funny thing is there was an article in Gizmodo by Anna Jane Grossman who wrote that book, Obsolete, which I did not read, but saw the cover of and thought I would like to read, which is like 98% of books with me. And she talked about how, the daughter talked about how the dad was really anal and he tried to remember everything. And whenever she took a message from someone, he would be like, I want you to get their name, their callback number, their address, the reason for calling. Like he had this list that you had to do in the household if you took a message. So this was right down his alley, was to organize information in this way.
By the way, that is a flashback for me, is being taught how to take messages for people in the house. Like for my mom and dad.
Name, number, and reason for call.
Name, and you'd write it down. And so as a kid, I remember that system.
Did you have to say the residence or did you say hello? We didn't have to do McLaughlin residence.
I would say hello, but like I think the Jubies did like the Juby.
Oh, the Juby residence.
Juby residence.
Anybody with class did residence.
Right, we didn't do that.
We didn't have class.
Yeah.
So he invented this in the 50s. Then by the 80s, the Rolodex had become such an icon that lawsuits were filed by companies who accused former employees of taking them with them when they left. So it's like, he's taking his Rolodex with him.
Yeah.
Is a euphemism, but it's based in a literal truth in that depending on what the business you were in, like an ad man, like you were talking about, your Rolodex, your physical Rolodex was incredibly valuable.
The contacts that you made, you're talking about backing up your contacts to the cloud.
Yes.
Yeah, that thing became extremely valuable.
Did they have
for business contacts?
They didn't have backup Rolodexes, I don't think, because, okay, so models were selling for $200 at the time, even though people often valued them at prices far higher than that once they got filled up. Listen to this.
Sure.
In fact, an entire episode of Moonlighting, remember Moonlighting with Bruce Willis sitcom?
Sybil Shepherd.
Was devoted to one stolen Rolodex being held ransom for $50,000. An entire episode.
It's a fictional world.
That was fictional. But Rolodex is up to $50,000 in a fictional world.
You know, it would be cool to like, I bet you can buy Rolodexes now off of eBay that are like fully populated, and that would be fascinating.
Well, yeah, it would, but you can also buy brand new ones because
I'm not into that.
In the interview that this author conducted with the daughter of Arnold, she said, I'm talking about this from my book, Obsolete, and the girl got a little upset and was like, they're not obsolete. People still buy them and still use them. They're still sold. She probably says that because she gets a little bit of that money even to this day.
My Nana and Papa, they didn't have a Rolodex. They would get, the phone was beside the calendar, and then the top of the calendar had an area where you would write down numbers. So every year they would kind of have to start over, like transfer over the most important numbers. And then she'd scribble all over the top of the calendar with like, it just had, by the end of the year it would have numbers all over it.
And then she would repeat the ones that she wanted to hold on to.
I think so, she must have. I mean,
it's an interesting system. Doesn't seem very efficient, but at the same time,
because you're there on the phone.
You can reevaluate every single year.
You're on the phone and you're just like, I'm gonna write down your number or write down the number I need to call, and then you call it, That's where you need it anyway.
What if Bob Jenkins in Des Moines, Iowa was listening to this podcast?
He is.
He's freaking out.
Remember just answering machines?
Yeah.
I remember, I don't even use voicemail. If
it's just a black hole for me, man.
My mom called me this morning. She was like, I was calling you and I was trying to leave a voicemail and you called me back. And I'm like, I almost said, don't leave voicemails, just, text me. That's voicemail boxes are obsolete. But I remember whenever we would come home from anything, I would run, as a kid, I would run into the living room and I would press play on our cassette tape run answering machine, and you'd hear the beep, and then you'd hear the recording, the analog recording that somebody left, and then it would beep again, letting them know, oh, you're almost out of time. And sometimes they'd have to call back, leave a second voicemail to continue their thought.
Right.
And then, I don't know, it was an exciting moment because every second that you're out in the world, you're not receiving calls. You know, it's this sensation of like a buildup of expectation. It's like, well, there was always something to look forward to. I would, like I said, I would bust in the door and I couldn't wait to hear who had left a message.
On your mom's answering machine?
Yeah, it was just exciting to me. I bet
don't remember.
Something happened while we were gone. Somebody called.
Well, first of all, I definitely did not have an answering machine when I was living at home with my parents. They did not have one.
They didn't, your family didn't own an answering machine?
Not for the longest time.
I remember when we
maybe
got it,
at the very tail end of high school.
I was very fascinated by it.
I don't think we had one. And I think that's
weird.
Well, I don't think it's that weird. I think there was a lot of families that didn't have an answering machine.
It's one of those things that once you had it.
Maybe I'm blocking it out, but I'm pretty sure that we did not have one
like you couldn't live
the
without
majority of the time that I lived there. And then, did we have an answering machine in the college dorm room? Because I know I had one when I first got married.
Our college dorm room phone number had voicemail boxes.
System, yeah.
And like you would pick up the phone and the dial tone would be different. And then
if it was beeping, if it was a broken dial tone, that meant that you had a message.
And then you would put in your code and it would lead to either my voicemail. It would lead to my voice box. I would be speaking.
Yeah, my code 1958.
But do you remember the commercial where they would sell greetings? It was called Crazy Calls.
Crazy Calls, a tape of 7 different songs and funny recordings for answering machines.
No.
Nobody's home. Nobody's home. Nobody's home. Nobody's home. Nobody's home. And then there was.
Hold on, you didn't use this service?
I just remember I wanted it so bad.
How would you get it onto your answer machine?
It was 7 songs. I looked this up. It was called Crazy Calls, and it was 7 different tracks on a cassette tape that would fit in your answering machine. And your answering machine would know it would cue up the tape and then play it, and then it would record. But sometimes it would have to fast forward.
Is it one tape? One tape has the greeting and the messages?
No, it's a separate tape. So there was a greeting tape and then a recording tape. That's how it worked. And I remember there was a rap on there that was like, leave your message. We're not home, but leave your message at the tone. And then
That's a good one.
There was one that was like, wait for the beep. Wait for the beep. It kept saying that. And it was like a rapper.
And there's also the classic, hello.
That wasn't one of these 7.
Gotcha, I'm not home.
That's too annoying.
If you ever did that, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I wanted those tapes so bad.
But you're right. Yeah,
that was the peak of technology for me. It was like
little tapes.
We got that one too. First it was the bigger tapes, and then you would get an answer machine and it would have those little tapes that like you'd put like the hand recorder was like note to self.
But then it went to the one we had when we first got married was no tape.
Yeah, kind of digital or something.
It was being recorded locally in there somehow. And we had that we had a regular phone with an answer machine up until they started putting voicemail built into your phone service, which was widespread sometime in like the early 2000s. That's when you just started doing it that way.
Did you have anything else on your list?
I did. Phones with cables.
The tether. Yeah, the spiral cordage.
The phone I have at home has a cable on it. It's not cordless. Because I remember
Really?
when my mom got a cordless phone and we were like, what? She can walk from room to room while on the phone? And it was just like, we are rich.
I remember first time I got that, yeah. I remember first time we got one of those, I probably called you, but I remember walking out on the front lawn. I was like, I'm in the lawn!
I'm outside talking on the phone.
I'm so rich!
I'm blowing my own mind.
My neighbors can see me.
Yeah, because before that,
I'm talking on the phone outdoors.
well, and you had to think about where the phones were. I mean, most people had a phone in every room. Like you had a phone in each bedroom so you can have those conversations with your lady friends that you didn't want your parents to hear. But even then, like you had the phone and then you had to you stretch the cord, like if you wanted to sit in your chair or lay down on your bed and you got there's the cord, it's tethered, man.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get the whole phone, like you could take all of Garfield and bring him into bed with you, but you gotta make sure that the cord from Garfield to the wall is long enough for that.
Right, and I do remember back to the in the house party line thing, what would actually happen the most, not me eavesdropping on my stepsister, would be I would be on the phone with my girlfriend or something, and then my mom on the other side of the house would need to make a phone call and she would just pick up the phone. And I'll be like, Mom, I'm on the phone. It was and then she would, oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
or she'd be like, well, I need to use the phone, so
and cordless
you
phones,
need to get off.
And cordless
You can
phones
get back on after I call.
were much easier to tell
Time and date.
when somebody had interrupted. So if you had the classic phone, either a rotary phone or just a non-corded phone, a non-cordless phone, you get your finger and you'd stick it up under the receiver and hold down those two clear pegs that would come out that would indicate that this phone is open, the phone line's open. And you'd hold it down and then you'd open it up. You'd get the phone in position.
And then you'd
turn it like this so you wouldn't breathe into the phone. And then you very, very, very quietly left.
So you did eavesdrop on your brother.
No, I just knew how to do it. I just know the technique.
You had the power, but you didn't wield it?
But with a cordless phone, it was very obvious, you could hear it. Somebody just came into the conversation.
Yeah. It's Mom, I'm on the phone. Ugh.
And then every once in a while, you can replicate the situation when you're charging your phone and you get a phone call and you don't want to stop charging it. And you're down there next to your bedside table with it.
Yeah, you can feel.
I'm doing it the old fashioned way.
You can feel what it was like to be tethered.
Did you have anything else?
Mm-mm.
But you do, I think, as our custom now, have a recommendation for all the Ear Biscuiteers.
So thanks for taking a trip down memory lane. Let us know, #Ear Biscuits, what phone-related nostalgia was brought to your mind. Something you remember about the way phones used to be. #Ear Biscuits. And now it's time to get some Rex in effect.
Work on that.
I'm gonna check baby. It's a rump shaker. It's a song.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of that's my recommendation this week is a song. I love it when I find a song, it's whoa, something about this song is special and I never even knew it existed. I played this for Rhett earlier today.
Yes.
And would you agree that this is a song not to be missed?
It's very notable.
It's weird.
I think it has special, I knew when you were playing it, exactly why you were playing it for me. I don't necessarily know that would translate to everyone.
Right.
But you were playing it for me because you were the person who sang this song at the time that they sang it, and then the way that it sounds, all of those things are gonna be a little bit difficult for you to reconcile, and it's gonna be a little bit of a trip. And you were right, my friend.
Yeah, and so, I don't know where it's gonna strike you. And I will say that I'm not giving an endorsement of this artist's personal beliefs or what they may put on Twitter now.
No telling. Does he have a Twitter account?
Yeah. So don't go there. Just enjoy the song for what it is. But the song is called Behind Your Eyes. by the Charlie Daniels Band. You may know the Charlie Daniels Band from The Devil Went Down to Georgia. He was looking for a soul to steal. He was in a bind and he was way behind and he was willing to make a deal.
It's a good
fiddle song.
That's what he's known for most.
Even when we went to New Orleans and we went to that like dueling piano bar,
of course
they started playing that song.
Right, got to.
And it's a good song.
Yeah.
But this song, Behind Your Eyes, is the song before that song on the album. And it is like night and day different in terms of like the genre. It's not this like, you know, you may consider Devil Went Down to Georgia like a redneck fiddle song.
I think that's the official genre on iTunes, redneck fiddle.
The sound and
well,
the production of that song was
it's
just
got
very
this-
unexpected
it's
for
got this,
Charlie
like,
Daniels Band.
Late 70s rock kind
Yeah.
of thing, and then these, which is one of my favorite things, is
Harmonic.
harmonizing lead guitars, like two Telecasters playing
Which is a
complementary
that's
solos.
it's not limited to, but it is a big Southern rock thing when he was in that
There's
zone.
just something about
I think
it.
this is 1979.
It's a good year.
So yeah, just think of me when you listen to that song, and it may surprise you.
Here's to being surprised.
That's my recommendation.
You know what? You got to keep surprising yourself. Don't ever stop surprising yourself. Go outside on your phone, talk in the yard, untethered.
If you don't know your own phone number, memorize that.
Yep.
Starting with you, Rhett.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
All right, we'll speak at you next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. To watch more Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist on the right.
To watch the previous episode of Ear Biscuits, click on the playlist to the left.
And don't forget to click on the circular icon to subscribe.
If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Thanks for being your mythical best.